Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I think next match on the docket, if I could be self-involved, Seattle Reign 0, Kansas City Current 0. A couple chances in there early on in the 9th minute. DiBernardo hits an absolute screamer that was for sure going in, and Reign backup keeper Laurel Ivy made a diving save to punch it over the bar. I get the feeling we'll probably be talking about Laurel Ivy a few times as we cover this game. Massive reason why the match ended up being 0-0. But I want to float something to you. It's a 0-0 draw at home against the team that's at the top of the table. I feel like Seattle got what they wanted in this match. In the first half, KC only had that one big chance, and they had 4 shots on target. And they were able to stop Temwa Chawinga from running onto the ball with a full head of steam. It felt like that was priority 1 for them. And, DiBernardo's her great shot attempt, it came outside the 18. Felt like most of her chances were coming away from the goal. So I know people, they can refer to it as struggle ball or parking the bus, which I don't deny any of those allegations. But is it fair to say that if you're Seattle and you get a 0-0 draw at home, you should kind of be psyched about that?
I definitely agree. I mean, obviously, you want the 3 points if you can get them, but,
Sure.
You're totally outmatched in this one as well. I think the shot count here, a little bit of the same. This one felt a lot closer, though, 19-5. Current outshot Seattle, and then 5-1 shots on target. Michelle Cooper also had a laser in the first half that Ivory had to deal with. She's a handful.
She looks great.
Yeah, she looks really good. I think you got to be really enthused if you're the Reign. And I think one thing they did against Chawinga, and we talked about this a few weeks back, was kind of take away her angles.
Yes.
It was the notion of okay, well, speed, you can contend with speed. If you say, I'm just going to go there and not let you beat me just by taking a ridiculously overcompensating angle. I thought Seattle was great from that standpoint, just taking that away, and just keeping Chawinga in front of them, quick to double, whenever she was in a dangerous spot. No Alana Cook. So, they had that stacked against them. And yeah, Ivory, unreal performance. I think that's like a all-star level performance in a big game, in a tough match against an offense that's cooking. No Bia on the other side. So that is going to take a little bit of the sting out of the current attack. But I thought Seattle did pretty well when they were on the ball to kind of keep KC honest. And I think that's how they were able to get out of there with a draw.
Yeah, great call out with Bia. Obviously you lose a lot when she's not out there, but they still had to contend with Chawinga, Lavager, and DiBernardo. And then Dabinia comes on later in the match.
Yeah.
I'm also glad you mentioned that Alana Cook, she's kind of a late scratch, just hours before the match. And Laura Harvey talked about it in the post-game press conference. They basically had to call upon Shea Holmes and be like, okay, you're going to be one of our 2 center backs against one of the best offenses in the league. Go out there and do it. And she did. I thought Shea Holmes played really well. You're totally right about them taking out the angles. It just felt like they were also able to, even with a real lack of shots, they didn't have a shot on target in the second half. All their shots on target, all their shots, I believe. You can fact check me live while I'm doing this, but okay, pardon me. 2 total shots in the second half. None of them on target for Seattle Reign. Hard to score that way. But they weren't particularly interested in scoring. They were just interested in stopping Kansas City from scoring. They kept Chawinga, they cut off her angles, like you said, but it felt like they made her play in areas that were just less dangerous. So it's you can hold the ball, but as long as we're just not getting shots fired at us for 5 minutes straight, then we can deal with that. Kansas City had a lot of attacking moments, but Kansas City never really got out on big counterattacks or big transition attacks, which we know that's almost where they're even more deadly than just coming at you straight on in build-up play. So it felt like that was a big part of the game plan.
When you think about it from Seattle's standpoint, it didn't feel like any of those Seattle attacks featured more than 3 or 4 players in an advanced position. Never. So I think they were just we're not going to commit people forward. We know we're not going to kind of score this way. So I really respect the game plan from Seattle's standpoint. You need points. You need not to lose matches. You need to kind of protect home field. And they probably feel pretty good about that result if I had to imagine. Just because at the number 9 that, like that kind of will strike some fear in the opposing teams. Seattle just doesn't have that right now.
Right.
But everywhere else, they're super solid. Like there's no real super weak points of that team. And that's definitely a result you can build on. So I feel like if you're Seattle, it doesn't matter who's coming to town, doesn't matter where you have to go, who you have to play. You kind of feel like, hey, we can hang with every single team in the league on any given day. So that's kind of what a result like this is able to deliver.
Totally agree, man. And, Kansas City came in there to play physical. You mentioned Michelle Cooper. She had a couple of moments there where she was just smashing into different Reign players. And, they play fast and they play physical, but that is part of the DNA of the Seattle Reign Football Club, especially under Laura Harvey. And so I felt like they kind of relished that challenge. I, of course, attended the post-game press conference and asked Laura Harvey in the most artful way I could. I just kind of looked at her and said, Laura, Chewinga's been a world beater all season. How did you slow her down today? Because I was still kind of in a state of like, I can't believe she didn't beat us. Like,
yeah,
or beat the Reign. Pardon me, not us. What's that? And Harvey had a little bit of a smirk and said we had a very specific game plan to slow down Chewinga. And she called out Phoebe McClernand, particularly, who was playing left back.
Excellent.
Who had several key moments where she was like cutting off those angles, like you said, but not afraid to go in there and slide and just get the ball out of bounds. And just don't let this thing become a track meet.
Mm-hmm.
And Harvey specifically pointed out Shea Holmes and McClernand and kind of helping with that effort. The first word out of her mouth, before she answered my questions, another journalist asked Laura Harvey about her impressions from the match. And Laura Harvey just goes, gritty, which I just loved.
That's excellent.
And, you could tell that she was just like, okay, they're going to come into Lumen Field in Seattle and try to bully us. Not tonight. Like, it doesn't matter if this is our second match in 4 days, 5 days, whatever it is. We'll play physical right there with you.
That's really illuminating. Like when I hear you say Laura Harvey says, hey, we came in with a game plan. That basically to me says we knew that this game needed to be played on our terms.
Yeah.
And I think this game was absolutely played on Seattle's terms.
Yep.
And I think that it's all part of the same recipe and we got that same good result for a team that some people root for.
Right. I mean, other people around me in my neighborhood, obviously, yes. I live 10-minute bus ride from the stadium, plenty of Reign fans running around. I observe them as a journalist.
Yep.
Down the middle.
Straight down the bike. So you had Laura Harvey in the hot seat.
Of course.
What else did you learn in the post-match press conference?
So Laurel Ivory, we talked about her incredible match, was the player of the match. As soon as it was announced in the press box that Laurel Ivory was the player of the match, everybody in there just went, yeah, duh. like everybody pretty much knew what time it was. So Ivory was at the press conference. I mean, she took a couple shots in there, fighting for the ball. Had to make some diving saves, as we talked about. When asked about the physical play, Ivory just kind of shrugged and said, we needed to get points, and, quote, if you take some hits, then you take some hits, end quote, which I thought was such a great attitude about it.
I just want to say real quick, Laurel Ivory, the word that I had in my notes that I want to kind of make sure I hit, her instincts, like instinctive, her instincts were off the charts.
100%.
I thought she was just so impressive. She just seemed to know where everything was going to be coming from. Even that one play where she fumbled, where she comes out, she catches it, one of her defenders kind of knocks it out of her hands with her head. Like even on that play, it was the right read, and she was still able to recover. Ivory, I was just very, very impressed. I'm like, this is probably a starting goalkeeper in this league.
Looks like it.
Somewhere. So shout out to her. Excellent game.
And Sofia Huerta, she joined Ivory in the press conference. She talked about like a level of desperation after they get a win in the opening match of the season, then they lose 5 straight. And Huerta said, quote, right now, I'm just thinking points, end quote, from every match that they play. She had actually kind of looked around, a funny moment where Huerta said, I don't think I've ever lost 5 games in a row, and then looked at their media relations person, was like, you'll have to look that up, but I don't think we've ever lost 5 in a row since I've been here. So they knew it was getting scary hours pretty early in the season, dropping 5 in a row. Now they have a win and a draw. climbing back up. They're sitting at 11th on the table right now, just a few points out of playoff position, trying to get things back on track. But they head south just a little ways to take on those Portland Thorns, play their third match in about 9 calendar days. And I think it's going to be a tall order for the Reign down there.
Yeah, I think so. Portland's playing really well right now. Another team that found their groove or is finding their groove. I think Sophie Smith is looking really good, not only as a scorer, but also playmaking, which is it's just going to take that team, that offense to another level. So if that's something that she can really add to her game, like for real, that makes her just extremely, extremely dangerous. And that team is pretty stacked, pretty nice roster.
Yeah.
Probably like top third of the league with regards to just straight talent.
100%. So I'm very interested to see how that one goes. I mean, parking the bus and playing physical at home worked against Kansas City. If I had to guess, we're probably going to see more of the same down in Portland. So we'll see how it works out. But Kansas City, they head home to take on the North Carolina Courage in a battle to determine what city or state has the best barbecue and a very important place on the table as well. So North Carolina is coming off of 2 straight losses. You got to think they are desperate for a result. So I think we might be in for a banger in that one.
The one thing I was going to say about this Casey Current North Carolina Courage matchup, and I think Portland as well, and I mentioned Angel City earlier, we always have to keep in mind, this is a long season.
Yeah.
We talk about like November, like when this thing is going to be over. I think we're going to see a lot of runs. I think we're going to see a lot of losing streaks and skids and slides and, sort of like middling play. And I think we're going to see a lot of up and down. A team like Angel City, team like Portland, very slow starts. And then you look at a team, like Bay FC. I think they had a couple wins early, but then you zoom out, they've lost 6 matches. They've lost 6 of 8.
Yeah.
And they're still kind of dangerous on any given day. The Courage, I think, are in real trouble of kind of sliding, and then maybe we need to kind of recontextualize some of those early results. But at the end of the day, we got to just kind of keep in mind, this is a really long season. I don't think that these results that we're seeing today are going to be any kind of really great predictors for what we might see in the playoffs, except for the Pride that are just clearly obviously going to be there, kind of all the way through.
Of course.
That later. Anything else you want to hit? Seattle, KC?
I think that covered it. I really like your synopsis of it's a long season. There's going to be a lot of movement up and down the table. I would love to see one of those graphs, one of those graphics of just like the teams moving from week to week. I think that'll be very interesting to see by the time November rolls around.
Oh my God, yeah. I don't quite have the technical chops to put that together, but it'll be a fun homework assignment. So I'll give it a shot.
I'm sure we'll find it somewhere on Al Gore's internet. I'm sure we're not the first people to think of that.